So today I'm going to be talking about getting started with the Consultant Toolkit. I'm Brent Ozar, and I use this toolkit every day, usually several times a day, because I do performance tuning work on big, ugly, nasty, terrifying SQL servers. So what I'm going to talk about is who it's for, who it's not for, the kinds of stuff that it helps you with, and show you how to use it, show you how to analyze the results. So when you're a consultant, some of the things you have to do is, for example, talk to a sales prospect. Someone will book a meeting with you cold, and when you start talking to them, you don't know anything about their server. So there's a lot of the awkward dance, like when you first start dating someone in high school. So tell me what you like. Tell me what kind of consultant you need. And it's really awkward, and both of you are having a bad time because the client doesn't really know what to say. They don't know anything about SQL Server. That's why they're hiring you. So before I had this, I would even have discussions with people on the phone or in WebEx going, well, can you open up Management Studio and tell me what the version number is? And the client's like, well, where do I find that? Ugh. That burns a whole lot of time, and it makes them feel stupid, and it makes you feel kind of awkward. You know, sometimes you just want to elbow them out of the way and go take control of the keyboard and go looking at their server, going, here, just let me take a look real quick and see what's going on. Then once you get past that hurdle, once you sign a contract and you start working with them, when you pop open that SQL Server for the first time, it's really intimidating because there's so many things you want to go look at. You want to go poke around and see have they got backups? Have they got corruption? Are they on a supported build or not? How many people are sysadmins? How long did the jobs take? There's a million questions that you want to ask, and you don't want to necessarily be connected to the SQL Server live while you're asking those questions. But in today's world, you're sitting there remote desktoping into something, running queries, poking around. It's all a very manual process and very time intensive. And when you disconnect the phone, you go back and you're like, oh man, I wish I would have run that diagnostic query, that other one. I didn't think that I needed it, but now I actually kind of do. And then later you would have a follow-up engagement, say 3 months later, 6 months later, even a month later. You go back in and you want to take a fresh look at the server. It's like Groundhog Day. You're starting again all over from scratch because the client can change anything at any time. You know how the servers are. Everybody's a sysadmin. Everyone can change anything. And they do. They change stuff all over the place, and you're right back where you started. Then one of my favorite questions was a client would emergency call in and say on a Monday and go, we had a terrible performance emergency over the weekend. The server was dead slow on Saturday. Everything was timing out. So to fix it, we rebooted it. Can you tell us why it was slow? And it's frustrating as a consultant because all the juicy data is gone now. And you almost want to lecture them and say, no, please don't reboot. Just call me when these things happen and I'll be able to go in and take a look. Well, I didn't want to pay your rates over the weekend. That's fair. Also, I was drunk. I wish I had some kind of way where I could empower my clients to go gather that data for me and then send it to me so that I could review it over at my leisure. The things that I hated about that work as a consultant was I got so sick and tired of the manual labor of copy-pasting a query into a remote desktop window, running the query, copying the results, pasting the results out into Excel. And because that data shuffling back and forth was so bad, I tended to run less queries than I really wanted. Because the process was just so terrible, I would try to run the bare minimum of queries that I could in order to get out and get back to delivering value for the client. Man, I hated writing my own DMV queries from scratch. I remember when I first got started consulting, it was just overwhelming. I would look at $1,000 a server monitoring tools that can tell me absolutely everything, and then community scripts that would tell me like one or two things. And I'm like, isn't there something that's somewhere in the middle? And all of us over time, we built up this little Windows Explorer folder, a folder where you keep all of your scripts. And they're kind of haphazardly organized, and you kind of sort of know which ones to jump around in, but you never really gather all of them. And then sometimes you need to ask for a second opinion. Sometimes some of us work as solo independent consultants. Some of us work in teams of, say, 2 to 5 people. and you want to ask for someone else's opinion, but they're busy right now. And when you go to ask for their opinion, they're going to ask for things like, well, can you show me the top 5 query plans? Did you get information about these indexes? And then you're like, oh, the game of telephone is going to start again. So that's where the Consultant Toolkit works. So what this thing is it's a zip file. It's not even an app that you're going to go and install somewhere. Everything is self-contained in a zip file. You're going to go download that, run it, and it'll run all kinds of diagnostic queries against your SQL server. Let's go see how it works. So I've already downloaded it onto my own server here, and I put it into this folder, Consultant Toolkit. There's nothing to install. It's just a command line application. There's a README, which I know you'll never read. Life goes on. So I'm going to fire open a command prompt, and I'm going to change into the same directory that this thing is in. I'm going to go into cd temp, Consultant Toolkit, and then the app, that's the name of it right there. Now, I need to say here briefly, you're never going to see that name inside my documentation that's public. You're never going to see it in the blog posts. You're never going to see it on the sales pages for this. You will see it in videos, but it's not going to be written down. The reason why is I want this to look like it came from you. I want this to look like it's yours. The client is hiring you. They're not hiring me. So even if you go in and look at things like the README, because strangely, your client will look at the README, but I know you won't. There's instructions in here on how you go about running it with Windows authentication, with SQL Server authentication, with Azure SQL DB, all kinds of stuff. But there's nothing in there about me. That's on purpose. That's because I want them to be your clients, not my clients. So now I've got it set up here. If I want to, I can point it at a different SQL server. So for example, I can say data source and then SQL 2017B, that's the name of my server here. I can pass in Windows authentication, SQL authentication, all kinds of stuff. I'm just going to hit enter here and it goes off and starts running queries. Now it's running a bunch of diagnostic queries. While it runs, I'm going to go over here into the output folder. This is where it's doing its work. For each collection that it's run, it's dumping out into an Excel spreadsheet. Plus, in a second, you're going to start seeing query plans plop into here because it captures the top 10 queries by which ones have been running the most CPU time, running the most often, duration, reads, writes, memory grants, TempDB spills, all kinds of stuff, and saving each one of those to separate files. These are all SQL plan files that you can then go open up in Management Studio later in order to understand what the queries that we're running right now were, what were the biggest ones over time. Man, you're just looking at these things plop down into files. You're like, this would take me forever to go and gather. Which leads to another interesting question. How long does this thing take to run? By default, we're aiming for around 5 minutes. They're all low priority DMV queries, not blocking anybody else. But if you want even more information, if you want to gather things like average CPU, duration CPU, or which ones are average, longest in duration, like long-running report queries, you can run it with another parameter called Deep Dive, which will gather even more stuff. So this thing's going to run on for like 5 minutes. Let's go ahead and look at another SQL Server's data that I've already got captured. When this thing gets all the way done, it's going to create a zip file like this, which will have all of those query plans and Excel spreadsheet type stuff inside of it. I'm going to go extract this. What you would do with a client, for example, with a sales prospect, is you would say, here's this zip file with my consultant toolkit, and whatever you want to name it is fine. Here's my app. Go run this. And then in the output folder, see, it just finished. Go copy and paste this zip file into an email or however you prefer to communicate between clients. Get me that zip file, and then I'll be able to go extract it and go see what was going on the SQL server. So let's go see how the output looks. So here's the one that I ran this morning on another server up in the cloud. Let's go extract that fella. Here's my lab server up in the cloud, and I got all kinds of stuff in here. The place that I'm going to start is in the Excel spreadsheet. I'm going to double click on the Excel spreadsheet. And it's got wording in here on the first tab, because what I've learned as a consultant over time is that clients want to open this and see what they're about to send you, which is fair. I want my clients to be well educated about the data that leaves their offices. So I have instructions in here that says anything that you want to redact, you're welcome to, but you may want to just give me some idea of what you're redacting so that I know, for example, if you delete all the information about your backups, that I know that there's going to be a surprise when we go in there and run it in person. You'll notice all these tabs across the bottom. So the way that I read it is I first start with the Uptime tab. Because so much of SQL Server's diagnostics are stored in memory, before I look at anything else, I just want to know how much health history I'm dealing with here. In the case of this server, I've only got about a day's worth of uptime, so I'm not going to have really great diagnostics about the in-depth history of the server. I get what the machine's name is, whether or not I'm on a named instance, what version I am, whether or not it's clustered, and whether or not availability groups are enabled. There's much more details about all of these in other tabs, like what availability groups are set up on the server, whether I'm a primary or a secondary, what databases are in the availability group, how far behind replication is, all kinds of other stuff. How many cores I'm dealing with, how much RAM, what the data size is that's on the servers, and then what the target and total memory is. This right here is a great example for me because I can see that the VM has 61 gigs worth of RAM, but target is only 25 gigs, meaning SQL Server only wants to use 25 gigs out of 61. This could be because they set max memory too low. Could be maybe somebody grew this SQL Server over time. Maybe they have multiple instances of SQL Server on there. Maybe there are other apps. We'll get into all kinds of other stuff on the other tabs. But this is just a really good place for me to start to tell me about the server. And then on the next tab, Health, this has the output of SP Blitz. Now, in a lot of these tabs, what I want to do is I want to tell you how to run these same queries in case you want to go gather this information yourself. For example, up here it says the query source is SP Blitz with check server info turned on. So that way you know where the kind of data comes from. Here, it's the first responder kit. And it tells me a lot about the people. First tab, Uptime, told me about the server. The second time tells me about the people who are managing it. Are they doing backups? Are they doing backups to the same place where the databases live? Is there database corruption? I want to know right away whether or not, Nick Fry says, I'm not sure if this is the right channel for the consultant toolkit. Yeah, sure, go ahead and ask questions in there. So I want to know right away, as quickly as possible, is there going to be a showstopper that's going to prevent me from having a successful engagement at this client? No backups and no CheckDB and database corruption are great examples of showstoppers. Memory dumps have occurred. I have a poison weight. There's been errors in the default trace. The stuff really from priority 1 to priority 50 is a really good idea of just how dangerous this server is in. Now you'll notice that if you've run SP Blitz before, SP Blitz usually has a URL column that lets you go back to brenozar.com and see more information about each line. It's not in here. And it's not in here because remember, these are your clients, not my clients. I want them to come to you for questions, not come to me. And of course, you as a consultant, you already know what these things mean. You know what it means when there's database corruption. You know what it means when there's a full recovery model without log backups. So this tab tells me about the people who are managing it. I'm going to scroll down a little further just to show you something that I always find interesting. The list of sysadmins. The reason why I find the list of sysadmins helpful is because I know who's going to be working with me on the engagement versus maybe some applications that might be working against me, someone who has a everybody sysadmin inside the box. Over on the next tab, I get wait stats. In the 25 hours since this server started up, how many hours of waits have I had and what wait types are they? Remember how I said the first tab, Uptime, tells me about the server. The second tab, Health, tells me about the people managing the server. The third tab, Wait Stats, tells me how unhappy the users are with query performance. Those three tabs alone are really all I need for a sales call. When the waits are this bad, when the waits are multiples of clock time, then I know that the server really is in trouble. Whereas if the server's absolutely bored, then I have a different response when I'm dealing on the sales call. For example, if this was a sales call I was about to take on, I'd say, oh, you know what? You have a server that's brand spanking new, SQL Server 2017. You're doing a great job of managing that. You're on a current patch version. A VM with 8 cores, or back on the health tab, it tells you that it's a VM, 61 gigs of RAM. You got a decently sized transactional database, around 300 gigs. You do have database corruption, so we're going to have to talk about where the storage is for this VM. And I notice also that users are probably unhappy with performance. You're noticing that this thing is spending a lot of time waiting on storage. You're maybe getting those 15-second I/O warning errors, which we have a tab for that as well. This changes the whole consulting dynamic when I'm having sales calls. People are like, oh my God, you're a psychic. You know about my server and you've never even seen it. Shut up and take my money. And then the contracts start raining down. You look like such a pro as opposed to your competition, because your clients are talking to several other consultants when they're starting the sales call process. Your competition is like, so tell me about your SQL server. How big is it? And then you come onto the sales call and you look radically different. You look like an established pro. Nick says, does Excel have to be installed on the workstation when you run the app? No, not at all. You can run it from a SQL Server Management Studio machine. You could run it from the SQL Server itself. I'd really rather not do that. I'm just kind of itchy about running it on the SQL Server itself. But you can run it from any VM, any workstation, anywhere. Doesn't need Excel. Steve says, how close is this to what SQL Constant Care sends to you? The format is wildly different, but we get a lot of the same data. Jim says, no, you wouldn't be able to open the file without Excel on the workstation. Yeah, wherever you go to open it, you're going to want Excel. Let's see what other... Kevin says, is the author set on the Excel file properties to your name? Oh, dude, please, let's find out. I'm not even sure where that's at. If you want, shoot me an email with that, Kevin, and I'll go dig in and make sure too, because I don't know what's going on there. Somebody said it's just there. I'm looking up. Oh wait, hold on, it's right there. Oh, hold on, file. Author Brent Ozar. Oh, sweet, Kevin. I'll tell you what, Kevin. If you shoot me an email, go to our site and hit contact up at the top. I will give you the Consulting Toolkit free for a year for finding that bug. I love people who find bugs. Now, everybody's going to be emailing going, I'm Kevin. Yeah, but only me and Kevin know what his last name is. That's a secret between the two of us. All right, so that's the first 3 tabs in it. How much would you pay for a tool that does all this? But wait, there's more. There's a databases tab that tells you all of the databases on the server, how large they are, how big their VLFs are, all kinds of stuff. There's a list of files for every database. I find this really useful because I want to know how slow their TempDB is. For example, here, this server has been set up pretty well with 8 TempDB data files. I can see the exact path that those data files and log files are all on, and then I can see how fast or slow their write stalls are, or their read stall files are, or their read stalls are. So that way, I can very quickly tell whether or not their storage is in good shape or not. Indexes, so those of us who like running SP Blitz index, I can see all kinds of stuff like aggressive indexes, which tables are dealing with locks, and what kinds of lock duration I'm dealing with. Here I'm dealing with 4,500 minutes worth of locking on the post table just inside the one day that this SQL server has been up. So I'm able to have a great discussion with the client about, it looks like you really query the daylights out of this posts table. And I've even been known to, as we lead up to sales calls, tell clients, hey, look, I'm going to give you this for free because it's desperately needed. You need an index on this posts table on accepted answer ID. Scroll across and you can see, here's how many indexes already exist on the table. Here's how many rows are in that table, what my estimated size is. Here's the create index statement. So that I can start delivering value even before we sign a contract. I can say, look, I'm going to fix all kinds of things for you when we get together, but just do me a favor, create this index first, and it'll get some of that noise out of the way. because I want to be able to fix some harder problems when we get on the phone together. Again, you look like an amazing genius when you're on the phone with the clients because they're like, man, this person's shipping value even before, that's shipping. Well, I need to say that a little slower. Shipping value even before we get started. And of course, when you're dealing with recommending indexes to a client, you want to know things like, well, what other indexes are on the post table? Well, there are other tabs that give you a complete inventory of the databases, objects, tables, sizes for each one of your servers. Now, this does max out at 10,000 rows. So if you have clients that have more than 10,000 rows worth of indexes, that's just a heads up that you're probably going to want to run SP Blitz Index manually. But what I love this for is that I can put this into a table in Excel and I can start filtering to say, only show me the post table and nothing else. Just show me posts. And then I can look at what indexes already exists on that post table before I go to recommend that they go add that index. I can see what their definitions are. I can see how often they get used, all kinds of stuff if I continue to scroll across more in SP Blitz Indexes results. Now that's the indexes tabs. There's more information inside those. I'll let you go explore those yourself. Then the plans tabs hold exactly what you think they hold. The list of the top most resource-intensive queries on this server inside the plan cache. Now, of course, me explaining to you how to work through the plan cache is way beyond the scope of what I can do in this webcast. But for those of you who are used to running SP Blitz Cache, you can see that you're getting the top 10 queries by CPU and the top 10 queries by average CPU, the ones that run very long in terms of CPU but hardly run that often. I can see the query, whether or not it's a stored procedure or a function or a statement inside those. I can get the analysis on things that SP Blitz Index found or SP Blitz Cache found inside those, how often they run, their total CPU time, duration, logical reads, all that good stuff. And then when I want to see what that query is, see how it has that ranking number right here, top CPU number 1, number 2. Well, remember our buddy, that little folder over here, here's where they are. Here are those top 10 execution plans sorted by CPU. As you go down, there's CPU average as well, duration, all your query plans. So that if you go, well, what is that top query by CPU? What's his execution plan look like? You can double click it, fire it open Management Studio, SentryOne Plan Explorer, whatever your favorite tool is. And then here you can go, oh, here's that post tables query that desperately needs that index. You look like a rock star when you're having this discussion with your clients during the sales call. I can show them their most resource-intensive queries. I can explain to them how we're going to be able to help them. Think about how dramatically different that sales conversation is with clients. And of course, that's just the sales conversation. Now, when you sit down to work, you don't even need access to the server in order to start building a plan. Now, simply based on the contents of that spreadsheet, you can start going, right, I know that I need to change based on that uptime tab. I may need to look at the max memory config and raise that sum. By raising that sum based on the other things that I see in the spreadsheet, that's going to reduce how much time I spend waiting on storage. It'll let me cache more data. Then I'm also going to have to look at adding this desperately needed index on the post table, which is also going to prevent table scans on the post table, making things even faster. We didn't have enough RAM to store data before. I know that based on that, here are the queries that it's going to impact. These are the things that the end users are going to notice is going to be immediately faster. And getting the satisfaction out of the end users, that's your goal as a consultant. It doesn't matter if you fixed fragmentation. It doesn't matter if you fixed fill factor. You have to be able to say, Phil in accounting and Mary in sales are going to notice the difference when I make these changes. And Phil in accounting and Mary in sales will say, yes, I've noticed that my dashboard is now faster every time I query on the post table. Whatever that consultant did, they're a rock star. You should give them more money. I don't know how often that really happens. So there's all kinds of tabs here for slicing and dicing your plan cache in different ways, by top reads, by duration, executions, plans, memory grants, one of my personal favorites, finding the ones that cause resource semaphore waits, spills. Now you'll notice that some of these tabs are only available on newer versions of SQL Server. For example, sorting by spills is only available in certain cumulative updates and service packs. We have a line in the spreadsheet whenever something didn't get called. Let me find one that didn't. Oh, this one was fast enough. Everything got called. But when something didn't get called, we explain to you in there why this one didn't get called, like it doesn't have a new enough service pack. Another one of my favorites is show me the top 50 most recently compiled queries for this server. Because sometimes I'm dealing with unparameterized queries and I need to see exactly what unparameterized T-SQL is coming in. And I can see that over here. There's also plans right now, as in what queries were running at the moment that this collector was running. So you can go see. Remember how I said sometimes your clients are going to go, oh my God, the server was so slow on Saturday night at 10 p.m. when you were at the tequila bar. What was going on? Now they can run it for you. You can empower them to run this on their servers, send you the zip file, and you can see. You can see what queries we're running. You can go back over to the file and see here are the query plans for the queries that we're running right now when this ran. Furthermore, if I go even further out on the tabs, you can even see what wait stats look like while this thing was running. The collector took 348 seconds in order to execute. During that, here's how much time I spent waiting on each of these wait types. Plus, there's a perfmon tab that will show you some perfmon counters that changed during that run. So you get a sampling of what's happening during that ugly time for the client. You can encourage them and empower them to run it as often as they want and then send you the results. If you want to work out some kind of payment thing where they pay you, $200 or whatever it is every time you analyze the spreadsheet for them, you're absolutely welcome to do that. There's other tabs too, things like the error log out of SQL Server, so you can see if they're having those 15-second I/O warning errors. You can say in this case, for example, I've got corruption in my Dynamics AX baseline database. I can see when the corruption was detected, when the database was restored. I can see the maintenance plans that they've got set up, the agent jobs that they've got set up, how long they take at their longest, when they're scheduled to run next. So like if somebody doesn't have their CheckDB jobs enabled. All kinds of stuff that you can gather out of here. Way more than I could even bother going through in a webcast. So let's see here. We got a bunch of questions that have come in. Let's go knock through here. So we have... Bill says, I can see clients with a DBA just taking this and running it with themselves after you hand it over. Yes, but there's a time bomb in the app. The app time bombs out every 90 days. It stops working, and they have to come to you to get another one. I want them to continue to foster that relationship with you. It's good if they run it and find value in it, because then they're going to come back to you when this thing time bombs and go, hey, I got a real itching for that utility you were using. And you can say, great, let's go through and talk about another engagement. Next, let's see here. Anand says, and that's not quite right about the author thing. Mike says, this is an excellent tool, but as a less experienced DBA, how do I decipher everything that was returned? You hire a consultant. That's why it's called the Consultant Toolkit. And I get this question a lot from people who played around with it. They're like, oh my God, this would be amazing as a full-time DBA. Yes, but it's not written for you. You can buy it if you want to buy it. Just know that it's usually a start of your training journey, that there's going to be things that you have to go and learn and decipher. For example, what each of these things mean under forced serialization or compilation timeouts. Anand says, that's great. Having it ready saves a ton of time. Ben says, do I need the SP Blitz stored procedures installed before I run the tool against the instance? Not at all. Everything's built inside the application, and it doesn't leave SP Blitz stored procedures behind. I didn't want to have it go overwrite your existing ones if you have customized versions, for example. Pedro says, why not allow your customer to learn and use the tools? You can. If you want to use this as a training tool with your customers, you're absolutely empowered to. It's priced per consultant. So if you have 50 clients, that's fine. I'm only charging you. Now, if you have 50 consultants at your company, that's a little bit different. Jeremy says, is there a list of what doesn't run when doing view server state versus sysadmin? Yeah, if you go out and Google, for example, what you get with view server state versus sysadmin, you can find a lot of things that kind of break down permissions across those. All right, so coming back over to the slide deck. So back into here. Charlie says, does the Queries Running Now tab include a column for the duration for each request, not just the wait time? Yes, back over on the plans now, it happens to be these first two. It shows you when the request first started and what its elapsed time is so far. It tells you all kinds of things like the memory grants and much more. So back over on the slide deck. So I mentioned that when I analyze the spreadsheet results out of here, the uptime tab tells me about the hardware, the health tab tells me about the admins, and the waits tab tells me how unhappy the users are. The next thing that you'll probably want to know is, how do I personally analyze the results? I've been using this tool for years now, and I'm so used to just ripping through it at high speed. When you're a consultant, you may want a second opinion at some point. So after you've bought it, on the documentation page, there's a how to analyze the results, where I talk through how I analyze the results. If you want me to analyze your results, what you can do on that page is you can book time on my calendar with a credit card. Just immediately pick an available window on my calendar, and then you'll get a GoToMeeting invite immediately. And at that time, when we go and get together, I just look at your desktop and we walk through that together. You don't have to send me your client's data. I don't do anything in writing. This is your client's data that we'll talk through, and I'll give you my own opinion. The way that I would leverage that as a consultant is when you're up against a wall and you have a server that you just don't understand, or you're not sure that you're going to recommend the right thing for the client. Don't tell me what you think. Just get together and we'll open the file together and watch how I go through it and see if I come to the same conclusion that you do. That, for me, is what's really valuable as a second opinion type approach. I did mention that the application name is not out in public, and it's okay if you write it and talk about it. I'm just not going to write about it and talk about it because I don't want people ever finding me. I want people to go to you. This is part of your arsenal. This whole thing is about saving you time, making you look good, and helping you deal with more clients in less time. So to go get it, go over to brentozar.com/go/toolkit, where you can sign up, go register for it, download it, get started playing around with it, run it in your own lab to gain confidence with it. And I've even got, when you buy it through brentozar.com, I've got a whole page dedicated to how I use it with clients, like the email templates that I use when someone signs up for a sales call. Here's the email that I auto-respond back to them with to get them to go run it on their system and send me the results back. You'd be delighted as a consultant how many people are willing to do that because they want help. They want you to have as much data as they can before you start that engagement. Mike says, at what point in the sales pitch do you drop the pricing bomb? Go ahead and click on the URL. You can see how it's priced there. Doug says, does the Exe have to reside on the server for it to run? Can my client run it from their workstation and point it at the SQL Server instance? Yes, you can run it from your workstation, and you can even, if you have like a VPN connection into their server, you can run it from your desktop pointing at their SQL Server. It does not have to be on the SQL Server. It doesn't install anything on the SQL Server, nothing like that. So let's see. Bill asks, can you rename the app without breaking dependencies? Not yet, not at this time. Steve says, why am I not seeing all those other questions? Because they're in GoToWebinar Q&A instead of the Slack room. All right, well, there we go. That's everything that I wanted to show through to you. Charlie says, this is really just a great thing, approach and pricing. Thanks for it and the generosity for us to help us help others. Yeah, this was the big goal when I pivoted our company and I said, okay, we're not going to do as much consulting ourselves anymore, but we have all these tools that we've built up. How can I help y'all do your jobs even better? And so we're like, let's do it. Off we go. So go play around with it. Let me know what you think and hope y'all enjoy it. Have a great week, everybody, and see you around.